Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transportation Exchange podcast presented by Rush Truck Centers of Canada. I'm your host, Jason Cuddy, and on today's episode, we welcome Ray Veeneman, who is the VP of Vehicle Remarketing with us at Rush Truck Centers of Canada. Ray, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jason. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we wanted to have you on as we spent a lot of time talking to OEMs and obviously about what we do with Navistar and Isuzu and Battle Motors and Kalmar on the news side, but we haven't taken the time to kind of bring you and your group in as far as the used market, which is a very huge and robust market in the industry, but also for our business as a whole. And I thought it would help to our listeners get a better understanding of what happens in the used market, and at the dealership level specifically, but also just the market in general. So I thought maybe we'd start off with maybe giving us an overview of what's the used market looking like today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're fortunate. We have a lot of things to sell at Rush, and the used truck market is a big part of that. And we actually produce our own used trucks at Rush as well. With having a large Ideal Lease fleet, we pull about 30% of our trucks from the Ideal Lease fleet, which is really quite wonderful because they're maintained from us, by us, throughout their lifespan. So the industry right now, as you asked, is still very strong in Canada. We're pretty lucky that way. Where the U.S., they noticed probably around last April a decline in pricing, a decline in demand, more specifically on the highway sleeper vocational truck type thing. But we've been able to maintain that. Part of that was because of COVID and our government keeping the laws up for the COVID restrictions, crossing the border, had to be vaccinated. All of that has really played into the strength of our used truck market here. We've been able to maintain our values, although now we're starting to see a slight decline. New OEMs are starting to manufacture better, quicker now. We're starting to see stuff come in.
Right.
And, of course, now higher mileage trucks are coming available.
That's a good point. I never thought of that. As you realize, as you know, the market's been really hot, as you can't get new equipment. Obviously, that's kind of, if you can get used, you take it. But obviously, as this has happened over the last couple of years, the fleets have run their trucks about 2 years longer than they like to. Absolutely. So even the fleet you would normally kind of be buying off of, even the lease fleet, to your point, right? As the lease fleet comes in, it's 2 years older than you would normally be, right? So the mileage is going to be significantly higher than you traditionally see in the same application coming into, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Shops have enjoyed that. Our parts department have enjoyed that. But, of course, trucks are aging now, and people are going to have to start disposing of them, which, of course, the value is going to be less because of the higher mileage and the vintage of the trucks. So that all plays a part of it going forward. And we're starting to experience that now, and more so, I think, towards the third quarter of this year.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think stuff's starting to slowly roll in, so you're going to start seeing equipment get traded at some point.
Absolutely.
For the back half of this year. From a spec point of view, I mean, we've seen on the news side, I think the biggest change in spec has been the move from a manual transmission truck to an automated or an automatic, depending on the application. That seems to be the biggest one, and I'm sure you're seeing it in the used side too as well, as far as the percentage has probably swapped significantly in the last handful of years.
No, that's very true. Like that would be probably the biggest change, certainly in our market today. It's automated transmissions or automatic transmissions. And, at one point we couldn't sell an automatic transmission. Guys said, well, I want a whole truck. They wanted all the gears. And now, of course, there's a lot that plays into that, right? A lot more truck drivers, a lot more trucks on the road, and it's just harder on your body. So it's turned out pretty good, but we are noticing that difference for sure.
Yeah. Are you starting to see, I know we're seeing on the news side, tech is starting to become the next thing. A lot of, driver aids, whether it's collision mitigation, lane departure warning, adaptive cruise. Obviously, these are fairly new into the new market fleet, but are you starting to see people looking or asking for certain technology on used trucks? Are they aiming for the used trucks to kind of stay away from the technology?
So that's a very good point, and it really depends who the purchaser is. The fleets that are buying from us still enjoy as much of the driver assistance as possible, like the collision mitigation systems that we do offer, and it actually helps with their insurance as well. So it reduces their cost of insurance, so that helps. The owner-operator still likes to have full control of their vehicle, and so they, it's an option that they would not prefer.
Gotcha. That's a good point, right? Because you're gonna have, I guess, two different buyers come in, same as we do on the new side. But obviously, you have some fleets who are looking to get into some used equipment, but you also have a lot of owner operators, right? So there's a different buying criteria that both of them are looking for.
Absolutely. Now, some of them are going to trucking companies that require and mandate certain things, so we try to help them to fulfill that. But as you know, you can't really order a used truck,
right?
But we try.
Fair enough. So, and then another piece I wanted to really talk to you on was, you see in the market, I mean, on anything, right? A lot of people are using, a marketplace, whether it's a Kijiji or Facebook, to sell a lot of things privately now. And I see a lot of, commercial vehicles on there as well. Obviously, probably, owner operators getting rid of equipment. So, but obviously a lot of guys will trade stuff in, and that's, a lot of what we do. Your fleet comes from trade-ins from new equipment. Maybe walk us through kind of, there's obviously benefits to both, clearly, but maybe kind of walk us through, why would you look at trading in a vehicle to a dealership versus, privately selling it potentially on your own?
Sure. So we'll do a couple ways. Sure. Like a good fleet that maintains their equipment, they generally do a pretty good job of even selling their own equipment because they've created a demand because they look after their trucks. So people like to buy from them. So it's not really always advantageous for them to trade because they have a good market that comes to them all the time. As far as owner-operators wanting to trade or possibly should they trade, they eliminate a whole lot of headaches by coming to a dealership. They may not get the full retail value that they're anticipating, but it's also managing expectations.
Right.
A lot of the guys that come into us have scoured Kijiji and Marketplace and all of those and say, well, this is what the truck is worth. Well, that's what people are asking, but they don't necessarily get that. And coming to us as a trade, they're guaranteed payment. It's a one-stop shop. They don't have to worry about anything. Our money is very good, and it's hassle-free. So they're not having to offer test drives. They're not having to be home to show the truck. So it's just an in and out, and we can expedite that very quickly. And we do all the lien searches, so all the legal aspects are covered by us. So it's pretty easy for them.
Makes sense, and I think, to your point, and we've had this conversation as customers, from your side looking to get a value on their vehicle, and I agree, right there. I'm getting this in the market. I see this in the market, and to your point, that is what people are asking. It's not necessarily what it's going to go for, but also there's sometimes a requirement. Things need to get done to the vehicle to get to that point. So, again, when you're looking at the trade, you're looking at the current status of the vehicle. What's it going to take to make it sellable, or how much you got to put in to get a good return on it, right? You're just going to flip it as is. Is it a wholesale piece of equipment? Is it something, hey, we can put a few bucks into it, certify it, and yes, it'll get a little bit more money, but obviously there's some risk because once you open it up, you don't know what you're walking into potentially, right?
Well, and that's a whole big can of worms. You're right. And if I could offer any advice to people that want to trade or sell their vehicle, should be more like their personal vehicle or any personal article they want to sell, which they maintain properly.
Yeah.
When they come to me and ask for a value on their truck or want to sell their truck is just coming off the road. There's oil cans, there's McDonald's wrappers, there's food, it's very well lived in. And to me, if I'm selling something, I want to present it properly.
Yep.
And if I could offer any advice whenever you're either selling it or even just asking for a trade value, our customers should bring them in cleaned, like they would want to buy it themselves. Well, yeah. And it certainly helps the value that we're putting on trucks. So, that's a big part of it as well, presentation, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I know, from, people we work with who do a lot of private sales on cars or something like that, right? Same thing. If you spent a few bucks and vacuumed the car, polished it all up, waxed it, shined the wheels, you can probably add a certain percentage of value in it just because it looks so much better than the guy who just took a picture of it in the corner. And even just taking good pictures sometimes can get a lot more interest than the one that's just dirty and covered in snow because it's the winter and no one brushed it off and hey, there it is if you want to take it.
Yeah, and the weeds are growing around it. And really managing expectations and ease of sale is probably one of the best reasons to come to a dealership.
That's fair. And I think, to put a lot of them at ease too, if, you for lack of just general numbers, if you buy a truck, say for 20 grand, and all of a sudden they see it posted later for 60, it doesn't mean there's 40 grand of margin in it. It means you put a lot of work in it to get at that point, right? So again, it's that expectation piece is like, yes, hey, well, that's why, but here's what we're going to put some money into it, depending on what the market bears, and, make them understand that we're not just buying it cheap and flipping it for really high, right? And obviously, there's investment on, like, to your point. We got to make it look nice, make sure it runs, because we stand behind what we do. We want to make sure that the product is good for the next person to enjoy it and use it.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. Absolutely. I mean, there isn't that kind of margin in just about anything anybody sells anymore.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's just that's really dreams and hopes. But no, I mean, we do a lot. And as you said, we stand behind our vehicles. We have to. There's certain things that we have to meet criteria, and safety is one of them when we sell them with a safety. And so we have to make sure all that stuff is done, and then it has to be presented in new condition as well. So there's a lot of upgrades and a lot of money spent for sure.
Fair. And I think, going back to what you mentioned as far as being presentable, a big part of trading in a vehicle, especially if you're buying something new, obviously there's some tax benefits to it as well, which most guys be aware of, and that's kind of another benefit of the trade. But if you are trading it in, there's it's a relationship, and it's a partnership between the two of you, and there's some sort of kind of common trade terms that are kind of meant to be respected. Maybe
Correct.
kind of walk us through what the industry sort of standard is as far as when someone says trade terms, and people are out there talking, trying to understand what does that mean to the person looking to trade it in, as far as what are kind of obligated to, or what they should be kind of meeting.
Sure. So when we look at trucks, or if one of our guys sends us a truck appraisal meaning they've filled out a sheet saying, okay, the truck is this model year, it's this model, it's this make, it has this on it for extra equipment, what the axles are, the mileage, the vintage, etc. But then they also identify any deficiencies. So deficiencies to go to trade terms, as you asked, broken glass, shouldn't have broken glass. Windshield, driver's side, passenger side, again, has to fit trade terms and safety conditions. So that has to be fixed. No leaking oil, no DPFs or emissions pulled from the truck, and all of that stuff has to be on. No frame damage. Those would be regular trade. Body damage not to exceed $1,500. And of course, if we look at a truck today and it's being traded 30 days from now, that truck has to come in the same way we looked at it. I understand there's going to be a few more miles on it.
Right.
But it can't, you can't pull stuff off of the truck
afterwards, yeah,
and then present the truck.
Yeah, no, fair, and that's good for people to know. It's also good for people buying, understanding like we brought it in, under certain conditions as well, recognizing that like we took it as a trade and had to meet certain conditions for us to take it in. So it kind of gives the buyer buying it, some confidence, knowing, hey, I didn't buy a full out lemon; it's got stuff chopped off it. Like, you guys have done some due diligence before it's been brought into the fleet. Right?
Absolutely.
Makes sense. So, you gave us kind of a little background of where the market is. What does the market look like, you think, for the next handful of months? I mean, it's hard to say. I look on the news side, and stuff's starting to roll in, which is good. Which usually means when new stuff rolls in, there becomes a bit more of inventory available on the used side traditionally.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my crystal ball, I'd be more excited about this, but it really, the market is, COVID's played a whole different role. And I remember when COVID started, I said, well, one thing about the truck business, it is very cyclical, and it's 7.5, 8 years, it does the same thing. And this has kind of changed. COVID's changed the dynamics quite a bit. Supply chain has made a huge impact. So, and as we talked earlier, so at the risk of reiteration, the age of the trucks is kind of aged by 2 years. So,
yep.
OEMs are not producing trucks as quickly as they normally do. So that's still, I think, helping us manage the industry as a whole. So we're not inundated and flooded with trucks, and they're not, trucks parked in fields at this point, which we had probably 20 years ago. We had a case like that. So that way we're still good. I think here we're going to notice the used truck market value fall to a normal level, which is good. It's good for everybody. And I think demand is going to slowly dissipate as well with that, but good used vehicles will always maintain their value.
No, that makes sense. And I think it's good to have that outlook, because if the market softens from a as a sale price point of view, as it kind of normalizes back to kind of where it was or in around where it kind of was pre-COVID, it's good to get that message out because obviously that impacts the trade-in value. So it's good to share that with the people eventually looking as their new stuff is coming in, they're looking to trade it in. Like, well, this, I should be getting this much for it. That's what it was, last year. I'm like, well, yes, but to what you just said, the market is normalizing a little bit, right? So obviously, if we can't sell it for, a higher rate, and you can't buy it for the higher rate, they kind of go in parallel, right? For the most part.
I've got a note here, if I can.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about pricing. So in May of 2022, a truck went through the sale. I won't say the brand or anything, but I'm comparing apples to apples
Gotcha.
here. So, and 1 year difference. A truck went through the sale at $132,500. So it was a used truck.
Yep.
Exactly a year later, that truck went through at $55,000.
Wow.
Same truck, same specs, same.
Yeah.
So it's just dropped. It went from 132. So May it was 132.5. September it was 93,000. December that same spec truck went through at 70,000. February it went through at 58,000. Then in early May in Toronto, it dropped to 49,000, but in Montreal, it held at 55,000.
Gotcha.
But just to give you an example, how silly the pricing was at that point, and it's now kind of normalizing.
Yeah, and I think what we see because of the availability, like especially if it goes to a market where, if it's an auction or something like that where people can bid, obviously then, you're seeing true market demand and valuation of what people are willing to pay. But I find on the used market, it's definitely way more dynamic than the new market. The new, we're held by OEM, where OEM says this is how much it's going to cost you to buy the vehicle. We're kind of at their mercy where, yes, we have, a trade-in value or we bought something at a certain price, but then the market will kind of really move all around, right? It doesn't care what you paid for the vehicle.
Yeah, that's very true. It's demand, and any auction, like we base our pricing now basically on the auctions. Where auction used to be wholesale pricing, it is now full retail pricing. There's a level of comfort, and I don't understand it, to go to the auction and buy a truck where if we had the same truck and we wanted 30, they would go to the auction and pay 40.
Yeah.
With no guarantees and not knowing, but they get into that hype, and there's only two people that want it, so they're bidding against one other person, which drives the price up, and kind of a false or artificial value, if you will. But you know what? That's what keeps the market going.
Yeah, no, true. And that's the other benefit of going, through a dealership on you. The price is the price. We're not, auctioning the price against another person. If two sales guys are on it, we're both talking the same price. We're not trying to upbid each other, right, to get the value. And we're not asking a customer for money. Hey, if you give us $5,000 more, I'm going to get the deal for you, right? Like that's not how it's working. That's the price that we've agreed on based on what has been put into what we bought it for. So you get some kind of almost like market certainty that you're not going to overpay. You're paying market price today, but you're not going to overpay just because someone else is interested in the same vehicle.
Well, and that's it. And we've actually done a really good job, I think, and we've maintained very fair level. We didn't take advantage of the situation because we know these customers are coming back to us again.
Yep.
And so for us to set a price, for a used truck that uses $132,500, knowing next year when he needs to trade it in, it's only worth $55,000. We're not doing our customers any favors or us. So, I think we've done a really good job of managing that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like with nature of what we do, there's a lot of repeat business, right? A lot of, I know a lot of guys who, if it's an owner operator or something, they buy the first one and then they buy a second one. They found another guy and then they start their fleets, from the used side. Buy something that's good, that's maybe 3-4 years old, that they can run another 3 or 4 years without breaking the bank on buying something brand new.
Yeah.
But they're going to come back, right? You treat them well, you treat them fair. They'll come back for service if they can, and eventually it leads into a long-term customer. So where, when you're bidding against such guys, that's not necessarily a long-term relationship. That's just, it's the market is what it is. And that's one way to acquire it. But this is more of, working towards a relationship and trying to help businesses grow. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's more fun for us too.
Yeah.
We've been in business a long time, and we like to enjoy, like our customers now. A lot of our customers are our friends. So we're more social than we are business people. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, and you work with each other, right? And it's about understanding the expectations, they understand our expectations for equipment, and finding a common ground and finding a way to both benefit from the transaction.
Sure.
Excellent. Hey, look, I want to thank you for coming in and kind of giving us an overview of the used market and how it pertains to obviously our dealership, but just what we're seeing in general in the industry. So I thank you for doing that for us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anytime.
Excellent. Hey, well, that concludes today's episode. I want to thank Ray for joining us, and to catch up on past episodes, check out transportationexchangepodcast.ca. Until next time, thanks for listening.